Really happy that we're here today to be here with the County Executive, Councilmember Sayles, and the entire council to gather to recognize this really, really important work of reconciliation and remembrance. And we're doing it at a very, very important time in the history of our nation, the history of this county, both of whom will turn 250 years old next year. No more appropriate time to remember where we've been and where we're going in the midst of what's happening at the federal level. I think I have to start by acknowledging the fear that so many in our community are facing right now. Just a few miles from here, in our own community, we're witnessing literally attacks on our neighbors by masked men, people waiting outside of our schools to take parents who've dropped their kids off, funding cuts to some of our most vulnerable residents, and many, many other things in the daily drama that is this federal administration. But I also want you to know that we've been here before. The tactics of fear, division, and exclusion are not new. They echo throughout our county's history, through our country's history, and it's a similar script. And just as our ancestors resisted and overcame, so will we in this moment. As one of the original sponsors of the legislation creating this commission, I understand deeply why this work matters now more than ever. The mass firing of federal workers, threats to immigrant families, attacks on our very history, the ability to tell what actually happened. Public education, early childhood education, go down the list. And again, we've seen this before. But we've also seen something else. We've seen communities that rise up. We've seen justice that has prevailed. Here in Maryland and in Montgomery County, we've seen great leaders like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and Josiah Henson who faced down these unjust systems and won. We saw activists sit at lunch counters and organizers march for voting rights who didn't have guaranteed success ahead of them, but they did it anyway. And they had courage, they had solidarity, and they had a commitment to a better future. I'm often reminded as a black elected official in this building that 2 of the men that were lynched in Montgomery County were dragged from this building. That was a jail, that used to be the county jail, and killed here in Rockville. One of the great things that this commission has done with partners is to memorialize Mr. Sidney Randolph and Mr. John Diggs Dorsey with 2 memorials in front of our council building, along with Mr. George Peck, who was lynched in Poolesville. Those are the 3 documented lynchings. We know there were others in back rooms and backwoods and other forms of terror. And it's really important that we sit with that happened in our county on our watch, and that we're not running away from it. We're saying we're going to move forward from it and recognize what happened and not only remember, but reconcile, which is the name of this commission. I really want to thank the commission and their members, as well as the MoCo LAMP, the Lynching Memorial Project, for all that they've done over the last, Jim was just reminding us upstairs, we passed this bill in 2019, so it's been almost 6 years that we've been doing this work. We've gotten these commissions going. There's so much work ongoing. And now we're moving to I think the even most important part of how do we repair what's been broken. And realizing that things are still being broken right now in this moment. And that work is hard and it's complicated, but it's necessary. You often hear the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice from Dr. King, but these are the folks that are actually bending it by telling the stories, by having a plan of action. And I just want to thank them for all of their work. I want to turn it over now to Councilmember Sayles, followed by the County Executive, and then we'll hear from a couple of our leaders, including the chair of the commission. So first, my co-partner, Councilmember Lorianne Sayles.
Thank you, Council Vice President Jawando, the County Executive, the Office of Human Rights, and all of the organizations that are present here today. including Jason Green, Chair of the Commission on Remembrance and Reconciliation, Susan Jenkins, CEO of the Arts and Humanities Council. Thank you all for being here as we recognize this important month. And if you were upstairs for the Remembrance and Reconciliation breakfast and you're not up here, feel free to join us, please. I want to thank everyone for their continued leadership. Montgomery County has made real progress, but we must never forget the difficult path that brought us here, or the work that still lies ahead to build a truly inclusive community. That starts with understanding our history. It's the responsibility of all of us, including our state and federal partners, to support efforts to study and understand how we got here. This month is a chance to reflect, educate, and ensure that future generations know the pain and resilience of our past. I want to recognize the Maryland and the Montgomery County Lynching Memorial Project for the powerful work in uncovering stories of racial terror and injustice. We acknowledge that the past does not define us today, but remembrance is essential. By telling the truth about the many victims who were denied justice, we keep their memory alive. At a time when our federal administration seeks to erase or censor the history from our museums and classrooms and curriculums, it's more important than ever before to stand up for truth. Learning hard truths isn't weaknesses, it's a strength. It brings our diverse communities a better understanding of the intergenerational traumas we carry and how we are coming together in healing. I'm proud to represent a county that embraces this work. Before we hear from our guest speakers, I would ask for a brief moment of silence to honor those lost to hate, violence, and racism. Thank you all. May we use this month to recommit ourselves to sharing and learning about our history and work towards a better future for everyone in our community and country. And now I'll turn it over to County Executive Elrich. Thank you.
So this is one of the more important things that we do. And it's important to Montgomery County, and it's important to our residents. And it's important to acknowledge the past and the present. And unfortunately, we have to acknowledge the present in ways we don't want to right now. It is extraordinary to watch a president of the United States actively erasing the history of black people from the United States. I don't think any of us ever thought we'd see active erasure. It was a struggle to get this information public, and to watch somebody deliberately try to take this down is really alarming. And I think they understand the damage that they're trying to cause. As a white kid who grew up in D.C. in the 50s, when D.C. integrated, and integrated meant that the white families left the district and moved to the suburbs. When you crossed the Silver Spring line at Georgia and Alaska, you were welcomed by realtors who would remind you that Silver Spring is still segregated in 1960. That doesn't end until 67, when the county outlaws racial covenants, the enforcement of the racial covenants that existed on most property in Montgomery County. That's life, and that was life growing up in Montgomery County. If you've been in my middle school, way back there in junior high school, I went to Montgomery Hills Junior High School, and we had a civil rights debate in 1962. And the pro side of that debate was what you'd expect, like every human being should have civil rights. The con side of that debate was that, and this is from students, that black people were not fully human. They represented the subspecies that needed to be treated like children and taken care of. It was kind of appalling to me when I heard it, and the fact that the teachers didn't say anything. It was just another legitimate opinion in this discussion about human rights in the United States. And I always talk about that to people, because you have to understand, when we're dealing with adults and sometimes older children, they're no longer children anymore, and they have ideas, they don't float out of thin air. They are rooted in people early on. And I would always think about the kids who thought like that and wonder whether they would ever change the way they looked at the world, because their parents reinforced it and they believed it, and no one in school said, "Are you out of your mind?" And it just goes on. At some point, it just becomes normal. And this country has done so much to normalize racism that makes it very difficult to erase the impacts of racism. And that's why the work of this commission is important. You've got to be able to tell the truth about what happened. You have to own what happened, and you have to take steps to undo the damage that was done. That's why this county in no way, shape, or form is going to back away from DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Say the words, they're real. And we're not going to do what the president's doing with the bridge and saying you can't have contractors if you get to hire the contractors through some kind of fair employment program. We're not going to fund the bridge. We're going to give contracts to people who win contracts because they deserve to win contracts, and we continue to have preferences for minorities, for women, for veterans, because there are people in the community who need preferences because of historical discrimination and disadvantage. So Montgomery County is going to keep doing the things to keep active things happening that help change the dynamic. We've got to tell the stories about what's happened here so people understand what happened here and aren't surprised, like, how did people get this way? There's a way you get this way. Teaching something very different is the only way you're going to raise another generation that doesn't believe this. So thank you all for being out this morning, and thank all the people who made this possible, all the folks in the commission and all the other folks around this, and Jim Stowe for making this an important event again this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We'll hear from Director of Human Rights, Jim Stowe.
Thank you to, first of all, President Stewart, members of council. Thank you to the leadership of Vice President Will Jawando and Lorianne Sayles for their leadership in bringing this forward as a proclamation. Thank you also to our county executive for his support of this initiative through the Commission on Remembrance and Reconciliation. And I'm a bit full this morning because I'm thinking about today we are acknowledging the personhood of three human beings who had no other particular distinction, reputation, except the fact that they were black. I'm just thinking about Sir George Peck. And as he was taken from the town hall there in Poolsville, the moments of agony that he must have experienced as he hung there, ironically, right outside a church. I understand that folks who had some knowledge of him were able to retrieve the body before they had morning service and was able to take him then to an appropriate burial. Then John Diggs Dorsey, how they took him again, as Councilmember Jawando shared, from a building here. The local law enforcement was overcome by those who wanted to make sure justice was served even before justice was delivered. And so they drug him out of this protective environment called the county jail and paraded him through the streets and took him to a place of his death. And 2 days later, 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 And again, I'm just feeling today, although obviously vicariously, the pain and suffering he must have gone through and the agony. And then lastly, Sidney Randolph, young man, just happened to be at the wrong place in the wrong skin. Convenience. I suspect, being new to this community, had no idea about what was going on, had no idea about where he was walking or who he might encounter. But that day he did encounter someone that allegedly said he fit the description. And they took him also to the same building. He was also dragged out of here as well. Think about that if that was one of your, if that was your father, if that was your brother, if that was your relative. And let me be real clear. This is not about giving anybody a guilt trip here today. But it's about acknowledging that we had human beings that were strung up and killed and murdered with such cruelty and inhumanity. And then here's the thing that got me most. When it came time for the trial and the final records indicate who was guilty of all this, and the criminal justice system had the audacity to put through parties unknown. Don't kill me twice. The other part of this commission's work is the reconciliation. We have to start that in earnest. Now I want to thank David Dice and his crew for helping us make sure that we do the remembrance part. David, thank you for your group who helped us with the construction. And let me just say, I called David and asked the question, David, I need your help. What do I need? And I gave it to him and he delivered. So David, thank you, my brother. So when we get to the reconciliation part, that's going to be the heavy lifting. Montgomery County, we dare not ever be again in a group of folks labeled as parties unknown. That we, in fact, are engaged actively in trying to move this community to a place that we never have been before. Good leadership. Good leadership is not taking you where you need to go. That's an escort service. Good leadership is taking you to a place that you never even imagined. And that's what I'm looking for. And that's what all of us are seeking here in Montgomery County. And so leaders, hear me loud and clear. The path is out there wide open for us. Let's never again be a place where the voices are unheard, but they step up and they sound off and say, hate is not welcome in Montgomery County. Thank you.
All right. We're going to hear from, thank you, Director Stowe. We're going to hear briefly from Jason Green, the immediate past chair of the commission, and then Susan Jenkins, the CEO of the Arts and Humanities Council, and then we will read the proclamation. Jason.
Thank you, Council Member. Thank you to everyone who is before us, this interracial, intergenerational coalition, Force for the Willing. And it's so important because, as Director Stowe just said, these were not isolated events. When we talk about the three known lynchings of Mr. John Diggs Dorsey, Mr. George Peck, Mr. Sidney Randolph, We're talking about activities of the community that involved individual lynch mobs, that involved the corrections institution, that involved the sheriff's office, that involved the newspaper. And so it's so important, critical, necessary that we meet that force with the same force of community. And so behind me, we have the corrections office, we have the sheriff's office, we have the fire chief, we have MoCo LAMP, we have NAACP, we have this coalition of organizations that are dedicated to this work. My job is to tell you a little bit about what the work has been and what the work is going to be. My name is Jason Green. I'm the immediate past chair, and I'm a member of the descendant community of Quince Orchard. And I'm a sixth generation Montgomery County resident and proud descendant of formerly enslaved people in this county. This commission was founded in 2019, and we've done the work that the council has asked of us. We have collected the soil samples in partnership with MoCo LAMP. We have erected the markers that Councilmember Jawando referenced that stand in front of this building. There's a marker for Mr. George Peck also in Poolsville. We have held events throughout the county. We hold events throughout the year. But this month, November, for the last 5 years, has been declared Remembrance and Reconciliation Month. And it is a concentration of our efforts. It's where you see predominance of our programming. Is where we come to you, the community, to join this coalition and walk with us in truth. As you've heard from other speakers, we are in a very difficult moment. Truth is being covered, it's being hidden, it's being erased. Erasure is real. You know, I usually leave the Bible quotations to Director Stowe and my father, but I woke up this morning with Joshua on my mind. And if you don't know the story, there's a story where Joshua is bringing the tribes together in Israel, and they have a decision to make. And he's presenting them with this alternative, but he says, for me and my house, we shall worship the Lord. Montgomery County has that moment right now. You know, through this work, I've transitioned from being just a descendant to now being an ancestor. I became a father. And it forces you to think about this work and our role in this work and what we will leave behind in this work. And so Montgomery County now has the opportunity to say in one united voice that we, in our house, in the month of November, we will serve truth, we will serve justice, and we will pursue it to its natural conclusion. Thank you so much.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I especially want to thank my fellow commissioners. My name is Susan Jenkins, and I'm the CEO of the Arts and Humanities Council. We have been a proud member of the commission since its inception. Our work has been to bring the concept of remembrance and reconciliation to the public eye. We've done that through the work. Our first exhibition was Certain Party or Parties Unknown, to really bring to light this racial terror that we've experienced here in Montgomery County, and to ask simply the question, what does reconciliation look like to us? How do you reconcile years, decades, centuries of racial terror in America here in our own community? Our work is to try to do that in a way that's both reflective and restorative. So I want to thank the County Council for hosting the Commission on Remembrance and Reconciliation. I want to especially thank Councilmember Jawando for the concept, which has been sorely needed in our community, and the County Executive for supporting the work, because without it, we wouldn't be able to move forward. So as Jason mentioned, we have done a lot of work about reconciliation, and so you'll see this month on your calendars, there are many events that the Commission is working on supporting throughout the county. Specifically, on November 22nd, we'll be hosting a panel at Montgomery College at the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus. And there's only one question that we've asked the community through a survey, and we hope that you'll be completing the survey. And that question is, what in these times does reconciliation mean to me? It's a pretty heavy question. It seems pretty simple, right? But when you consider the times, you consider the history, you consider the terror, what does reconciliation look like to me? One of the ways that we've thought about reconciliation is in an exhibition that's in the Betty Mae Kramer Gallery at the Silver Spring Civic Building entitled Contemplations. It is a reflection as well as a look forward to what reconciliation might be. So I do invite you to the panel on November 22nd at the Silver Spring Tacoma Park Cultural Arts Center, where we'll be discussing the question with a wonderful panel, and we'll hopefully hear from you too. So thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for continuing to keep the efforts of remembrance and reconciliations not only in your mind, but in your heart. Thank you.
All right, we're going to jointly read the proclamation. The Montgomery County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, proclamation. Whereas, from its inception, Montgomery County was stolen land made home to thousands of individuals whose agency was stolen through enslavement, and we recognize that the local and regional economy benefited from the exploitation of their labor. Following emancipation, racism and oppression persisted in systems and institutions. Racialized terror was committed as a means of subjugation. Segregation was enforced in schools, public facilities, and housing. Covenants and zoning plans were adopted to separate African Americans and white people, while equal and equitable services were not provided to African American neighborhoods and residents. And
whereas we solemnly acknowledge and remember Mr. George Peck, Mr. John Diggs Dorsey, and Mr. Sidney Randolph, 3 known victims of racial terror lynchings in Montgomery County between 1890 and 1896, whose lives were tragically and unjustly taken without due process through acts of racist violence that terrorized African American communities. And
whereas the Remembrance and Reconciliation Commission was created in 2019 to support the goal of bringing the community together to promote understanding of this troubled history and to seek reconciliation among residents. The county executive and council acknowledged the terror that racism and lynching created among African American communities throughout the United States, including in Montgomery County. This legacy perpetuates divisions that are reflected in current inequities and disparities, as well as weakened patterns of voting and civic participation. And
whereas the Remembrance and Reconciliation Commission works in partnership with many organizations, including the Arts and Humanities Council, Montgomery County Public Schools, who just recently is publishing their Reconciliation and Remembrance curriculum. Montgomery History, and the Montgomery County Lynching Memorial Project. We honor the righteous work done to research the stories of the 3 known Montgomery County lynchings, to collect soil samples and to establish markers in the county in their memory. And
whereas the state of Maryland celebrates Emancipation Day on November 1st, marking the date when a new state constitution ended the horrific institution of slavery in Maryland in 1864. This year marks the 161st anniversary of emancipation in Maryland, which occurred 1 year before the passage of the 13th Amendment by the federal government, and as a reminder of our capacity to engage in acts of reconciliation, initiates November as a month of remembrance and reconciliation. And
whereas Montgomery County is now home to multi-ethnic communities whose awareness of deplorable racism and historical discrimination against African Americans cannot be assumed. By openly commemorating, reflecting upon, and grieving the injustices of the past, the county can work to heal and facilitate community-wide reconciliation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mark Alwaches County Executive and the entire County Council of Montgomery County hereby celebrate the month of November as Remembrance and Reconciliation Month, and be it further resolved that the County Council and the County Executive encourage all county residents to join together in the pursuit of equity, mutual understanding, and moral justice by renewing these commitments each November and to engage in personal and communal activities of remembrance and reconciliation. Presented this 4th day of November in the year 2025.
Thank you all.